Blowback, Unintended Consequences. One of the most atrocious events to happen in the last 10 years to the United States of America was the attacks of September 11, 2001. There is no arguing that these attacks were appalling and a surprise to the citizens of the United States. Since the attacks, it has been explained that these acts were random and had no reason. Later, the United States government told its citizens that it is because they were free, prosperous, and that they were infidels to the men who attacked them. What if this is not true? What if these attacks are blowback from decades of the United States government interfering with the way of life of Middle Eastern people? Blowback is a term that was fashioned by the CIA, meaning violent, unintended consequences suffered by the civilian population of the aggressor government, Johnson. What does this mean? Take the Iranian hostage crisis of 1979 for example. Many Americans are not aware of the reasons given for this or what was the cause. In 1953, the democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran decided to nationalize his country's oil supply, and shortly after that the CIA secretly orchestrated his overthrow. The United States then presumed to install the Shah of Iran. The Shah of Iran allowed the United States oil companies to take over half of Iran's production. Even though the Shah of Iran was a dictator who overthrew a democratic government and tortured thousands of Iranians, the United States fully supported him. In 1979, the Iranian people overthrew the Shah and took Americans hostage, all while chanting, "Death to the American Satan." After the Iranians took the Americans hostage, it was believed that this was a random act of violence. But if it is looked at more closely, a conclusion might be drawn very easily. Why would the people of Iran not be upset with Americans? After all, the American CIA overthrew the elected government of Iran to install a dictator whom eventually began torturing and killing Iranians. After realizing this, one can realize and presume that the hostage-taking was blowback from 1953, Johnson. After the Iranians overthrew their government, Iraq went to war with Iran. Of course, because Iran had taken American hostages, the American government supported Iraq and Saddam Hussein. Over the course of a few years, the United States government approved millions of dollars in weapon sales to Iraq. Not only did Saddam Hussein use these weapons to wage war with Iran, he used these weapons to torture and kill thousands of Iraqi people. The blowback from this can be felt by the millions of Iraqis that resent and try to kill American soldiers and civilians in Iraq today. When Iran invaded Iraq, the United States intervened and retaliated, pushing Iran back out of Iraq. After this was over, the United States did not leave. It was followed by a decade of bombing in the Middle East, killing and injuring thousands of civilian people whom were completely innocent. If one looks at the basic way human beings rationalize things, it can be seen how irrational humans are. In many people's eyes, it is viewed that the people of the Middle East are angry with the style of intervention the United States has imposed on them. During the time the Soviet Union was at war with Afghanistan, the United States government trained Osama bin Laden to fight the Soviet Union. The United States also supplied Afghanistan with weapons. So, after nearly a decade of bombing, killing, and occupying different parts of the Middle East, some conclude that September 11, 2001 was a human reaction to the hardships they had been put through. Even though this opinion may seem to be extreme to some people, and it may seem unpatriotic to think this, there is also an unavoidable question that needs to be asked. How long does the United States government think it can intervene in the world before it becomes tyrannical and oppressive? The blowback that was such a massive and horrific attack on the American people themselves should have been the point when the people of the United States stood up and asked themselves, why did this happen? Was this really an attack on our prosperity and religious views? Today the United States maintains over 700 military bases worldwide. They claim this is for the preventative protection of the citizens of its country. The United States foreign policy entails preventative war, or the attack on a people or government for what they might do in the future. In the September 11, 2001 attacks, over 3,000 individuals died. Since the United States invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, it has cost the country over $1 trillion and over 6,000 service members' lives. How many more lives have to be lost before the war has paid for the lives lost in the 2001 attacks? What about the untold and unseen blowbacks that the American people undoubtedly feel every day? In 2005, the Congress of the United States passed a congressional bill authorizing government officials to seize, tap, and search phone calls with no warrant. Furthermore, once the individual has been intruded on, the government is only required to notify them after the fact. Today, the Obama administration is asking Congress to pass another bill giving the government authority to intercept all international data on the Internet and phones. This will include BlackBerry PIN messages, all social networking sites, and voice-over IP services. This is an attack on all Americans' liberties and rights that many feel are not making them any safer. As to quote Thomas Jefferson, "I would rather be exposed to the inconveniences attending too much liberty than those attending too small a degree of it." Jefferson. It should be concluded knowing that every day, whether understood, debated, or even opposed, that the United States government is causing some degree of blowback. It should also be considered that the blowback itself is also causing the American people to lose their liberties. With warrantless wiretapping and the use of GPS tracking as two examples, slowly the liberties guaranteed to the people of the United States by the Constitution are being washed away. All consequences of blowback. Works cited. Jefferson, Thomas. Thomas Jefferson. 27 September 2010 http://en.wikiquote.org/wiki/thomas_jefferson.johnson, Chalmers. Blowback. New York, Holt Paperbacks, 2004. Wikipedia. Blowback, Intelligence. Wikipedia. 26 September 2010 http://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/blowback_intelligence